What's up, guys? This is Crypto with James. Jesus Christ. There is a lot to unpack at the moment with crypto and general markets. So I'm going to try and do that as well as I can during this ridiculous sort of FUD cycle combined with some, the Evergrande FUD that has occurred. Um, Before I do, as always, I update my spreadsheet. The first 26 coins I spoke about on the channel that I thought were crushing this bull cycle. Remember, Phantom was a Udemy course where I said it'd be the best investment of the year, currently up 232x. If you invested $100 into each one of these when I released the videos, you were still holding those bags. You'd be in profit for $41,000. Add in your $2,600 investment, you're sitting on 43,700. Which is pretty great. I've held all of these bags at one point or another, closed positions on damn near all of them in profit. Not so much Grin. Grin was a disappointment. And reinvested that money into new cryptos. If you want to see the cryptos I'm in, check out Copy My Crypto. This is where I share my live portfolio, a portfolio I've built to maximize gains during this bull cycle. My top performers, my top holdings have outperformed the market. In fact, my entire portfolio has outperformed the market week in and week out. If you want to maximize your gains during this bull cycle before the inevitable bear cycle hits, then check the link in the description and get those profits, guys. Right. There's FUD everywhere. FUD everywhere. So I'm going to get into exactly what's happening with regards to FUD. And I'm going to start off with something that I've shown a bunch of times. This is a Twitter thread from Pauper, who was a CEO of a Fortune 500 company that used to manipulate markets. And his point was, and he goes through the entire thread talking about how they did that. So you're going to crash the markets, allow you to scoop up cheap Satoshis. Step one, the groundwork. Pay lower tier media outlets to publish bearish news, but not promote it on the channel. It just sits there. Then you get contributors from Bloomberg, Forbes, etc. to publish takes on the story citing the original article, and all of a sudden you've started to build momentum. And then from there you start reaching out to every tech writer you've ever known and getting them to reiterate that same story. All of a sudden you've got a ton of FUD and it causes a market crash. We've seen this. We've seen this throughout this past year, and we're seeing it now. We're unequivocally seeing it now. And we have been for a little bit of time in the literally in the most recent history. We've seen it with the SEC and the nonsense with regards to Coinbase. So let's just jump into that. So SEC threatened Coinbase with a lawsuit. I don't think anyone believes this is true, right? They work together, and the Coinbase we know are the most cooperative of all exchanges in terms of dealing with regulators. And we know they've been working together. We know it because they're now giving personal details to bloody ICE in the US. Why are they doing that? If not to find out your personal information? It's very dodgy. And everything that's happened with regards to all of this was effectively to slap down other cryptos that are looking at lending, or other exchanges that are looking at lending platforms. So they cancelled the launch of their lend product. I'm not even convinced this was ever in the works, to be honest. This just is a long play in terms of trying to crush people's perspective, to try and crush potential exchanges in their lending platforms. And we know it. We all know it. It's not. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just a fact. Because now the news is Coinbase is to propose crypto regulations to US officials. So they're meant to be working on a pitch to federal regulators on how to oversee the crypto industry. Why did they have that that level of influence? Because they're working in tandem. So all of a sudden we're going to see, nah, there shouldn't be lending. No, there shouldn't be lending. It's a ridiculous set of circumstances. And there's not going to be anything that comes of this other than potential regulation. Now, however you feel about regulation, I think regulation to some degree will stifle in the innovations within the platforms. However, regulation does bring adoption. So there's part positive, part negative. Fundamentally, I don't want regulation in the sense of I don't want governments have an influence on this. I don't see why they should have it. But you have to accept that it's part and parcel of a financial market. And this will inevitably be a well-adopted financial market. So it has to be incorporated. But the fact that Coinbase are proposing regulations, and inevitably I'm sure some of them will be taken up, sort of shows that this whole story was a story, nothing real. And just to sort of slap down and warn other exchanges not to offer too much that dilutes the value of the dollar. Protect the banks. Then we've got, obviously, Gary Gansler coming out saying that stable coins are the equivalent to poker chips at the casino. And we've had Yellen and Gensler talking about the Wild West of crypto. Yellen talks about the fact that there are I think her phrase was, most of the transactions that occur in crypto are illicit, illegal activity. Now, ignoring the fact that there was over $2 trillion last year of illegal activity within banks. So this doesn't even compare. It's not even remotely close. The entire crypto market is less than 2 trillion. But you're getting the scare stories. Keep reiterating them. That's the name of the game at the moment. And you've got to bear in mind, we've seen it throughout the year. We see it with China stories. We've seen it with Ripple. Now, Ripple, fair play to them. Ripple CEO, no plans to settle with the SEC. We're confident they'll drop the lawsuit. We're confident we've got the lawsuit beat. And keep pushing forward. I respect that immensely. So we'll see how the Ripple thing plays out. But from everything I've read, everything that I've seen, everything that I've heard, Ripple should win this. Without question, they should win this. Because the SEC in and of itself cannot define what security is very clearly. They cannot provide clarity to the crypto ecosystem at all. They're choosing not to. So it's a very weird situation that we find ourselves in presently, with attempts at regulation, but it just feels like we've got government agencies overstretching, overreaching, and trying to protect banks and close or put a foot on top of the market, which won't work, but it's interesting to see it play out. Now, and that's been pretty much the FUD stories, along with Evergrande. Evergrande, with $300 billion in debt. Biggest property firm in all of China. There are a number of banks that have started putting in money to protect them. I do think we're in a situation where China's Evergrande is too big to fail. Apparently they have agreed to start paying off debts, which has bolstered markets, not just crypto. Well, crypto's sort of doing okay. It's sort of sideways movement, but the stock market's recovered somewhat off of the news that they are going to be paying off debts. There was concern that they wouldn't be able to make them, particularly with the $83 million worth of debt for the dollar bond, but it appears that they are going to be able to start repaying. Now, what has also happened with regards to Evergrande, and if we have a look, Evergrande have had a number of different banks and businesses start putting in money to support. If we look, I believe HSBC was one, so I'll just double check. I'm pretty sure BlackRock was another. I've heard that there are a couple bloody Financial Times. I've heard there are a couple of others that have put in money to buy up Evergrande debt, so it's supporting it, because fundamentally you have to accept Evergrande is so big, it has such a massive influence in the property market that it could have huge ramifications regarding the entire market worldwide. You know, everyone keeps sort of talking about the sort of Lehman Brothers. Is this going to be another Lehman Brothers? No, it's not, because already we've seen 3 different banks start putting in money, buying up debt, so that so Evergrande is supported, so it doesn't collapse the housing market again. Because that would be ridiculous if that happened within the last, because it already happened in 2008. We can't have it happen again. So we'll see how it plays out. It's positive news. And, you know, everyone seems to be pointing to that, you know, good news, good news, good news. You know, even the Financial Times said Evergrande does not equal Lehman Brothers. That, by the way, is mathematical science that does not. So there is positive news. I didn't expect Evergrande would collapse because the markets can't afford it. You can't come out of a horrific 18 months and then collapse based on the poor management of one company. So, other good news, and ish good news, but optimism has boosted Ethereum's adoption. Now, Ethereum is certainly on a downtrend, and there seems to be pretty good support that it's going to that it could retrace down to the $2,500 level. But optimism rollouts have actually increased adoption since they've been coming to inception. So we are looking bullish on Ethereum, while in the short term, bearish, and it might last a week, 2 weeks, but it does look like Ethereum, whilst on a downtrend, should be rallying fairly soon. Now, bear in mind as well, with Ethereum, a ton of Ethereum left exchanges very, very recently. It was 1.2 billion in Ether removed from centralized exchanges. And this was only 5 days ago, before this sort of bearish thing that's happened. And remember, the bearish thing has played out because someone's made it play out. This thread is, so everyone should save it. It's a brilliant thread that reminds people how things occur in these markets, particularly when they're manipulated. But $1.2 billion worth of ETH left more centralized exchanges during like 5 days ago. And yes, there's been a downflow in the market. There's been bearish momentum. That's been people scooping up more ETH, which we know that's happened. You can see on on-chain data alone, Bitcoin and Ethereum have been picked up in mass. And that's part and parcel of shaking out people that are scared of the market, new to the market. One of the most consistent things that has occurred this year has been people buying in and sell at high levels and selling at low levels. That has been probably the most consistent behavior pattern throughout this year. Beyond bearish manipulation, that has been the most consistent thing to happen. The amount of people that bought Bitcoin at 50 grand sold at 38 grand. The amount of people that bought Bitcoin at 60 grand sold at 40 grand is ridiculous. And it's not ridiculous from that individual's perspective. If you're new to the market, this stuff can be scary. But you've got to understand what's happening. And while there is certainly manipulation there, and there is certainly there's some unfortunate things happening, I don't think Evergrande is necessarily manipulation. That's just information that's come to light and scared the markets. That seems to be resolved now. We'll soon see. That's going to play out over the next 2 weeks. But the market has a rough month in September. And if you look through September histories of news stories, there's staggering. There's staggeringly, like the amount of China stories that come out in September's in the last two bull cycles were ridiculous. It's part and parcel of what happens. So if you're looking at your portfolio and you're concerned, bear this in mind. Bear this in mind, because during the last couple of days where the market's been on a downturn, the richest people have bought more Bitcoin, bought more Ethereum. They haven't panicked. In fact, they've remained so consistent in behavior pattern that they've continued to strengthen their hand. Because long term, crypto wins. So you've got to think logically, guys, because it's a weird scenario that we're in. And if you're new to the market, this looks mental. But take your time and look through the information and think objectively. Think what you would do if you were rich and not necessarily money grabbing rich. But if you were just rich and you wanted to get richer, what would you do? That's what they're doing. And think like them. Think like them. Anyway, that's it from me. So yeah, some manipulation, but some positive news. Ethereum adoption continues. The Evergrande situation looks to be on its way to a resolution, a positive one. That's good news. That's good news for markets. Whatever you're invested in, that's good news for markets. And that's it. And if you're new to crypto, guys, check out Copy My Crypto. This is where I share my portfolio, portfolio that has outperformed the market week in and week out consistently. My top holdings have been absolutely crushing it. Wealth continues to build. If you want to build your wealth in anticipation of the bear cycle that will be coming, then check out Copy My Crypto. Join Copy My Crypto and start building your wealth. That's it from me, guys. Take care.